Hello, my name is Yogi, and I'm trying a hardcore Nuzlocke today of Pokemon X Vanilla for the first time. I never got to play this game all the way through as a kid, so I figured this would be a first good one to try and get since everyone always calls these baby games. I play with the hardcore rules, so if you'd like to see those rules, please check the description below. Now it's time to pick our starter, and in this attempt, we choose George Sisler the Chespin. From here, it's time to pick up 4 more encounters: Nolan Arenado the Weedle, Todd Helton the Caterpie, Fletchling Evan Longoria, and Litleo Pablo Sandoval. Now that we have our encounters, it's time to take on Viola, the first gym leader who uses Bug-type Pokemon. We send out George Sisler to take care of her Surskit. Surskit hits us with a weak bubble, and we then retaliate with a Vine Whip that takes about half of its health. And from here, there's nothing more to do than take another bubble and then also hit another Vine Whip that brings it into the red. Now this is good, this is slightly planned because Viola uses her potion because she's got a demon in the backfield waiting for us. So we hit another Vine Whip that we should be able to take out the next turn with, and we take one more bubble, and then we are able to get one final Vine Whip even though our speed falls, and we can take out the Surskit. Viola then sends out her Pavilion, to which I switch out George Sisler for Pablo Sandoval so that he can resist the infestation. Even though he will be affected by it turn by turn, he's got enough juice in the tank to... Pavilion is faster and hits us with another infestation even though we're already affected. But Pablo Sandoval fires off an Ember and takes more damage over time from Pavilion. From here, it's just a simple button mash to take a tackle and then fire off another Ember into Pavilion. We take a bit more damage from the infestation at the end of the turn. And from here we get hit with another infestation, and we fire off one more Ember on the beast, and we slay it. And now with our ragtag group of Mons, we receive the first gym badge. From here we pick up a ton of encounters like Byron Buxton the Combee, Jim Tomei the Squirtle, Fergie Jenkins the Bunnelby, Andre Dawson the Esper, Snorlax Pudge, and we then catch Madison Bumgarner the Absol,
I got an Absol.
Daryl Strawberry the Sandile, and then we also get Cubone as Javier Baez.
Glittering Cave. I get a Cube.
We grab a Tyrant named Goose Gossage and an Onyx named Dave Parker. From here, it's time to take on Grant, who uses Rock-type Pokemon. He sends out an Amara, and I send out my bulky Snorlax Pudge. My plan is to Oonga Boonga Smash using Rock Smash that I picked up in the previous town, Ambrit Town. And Amara hits me with a Thunder Wave to paralyze me, but I hit through with a Rock Smash, bringing it down in the red, and a defense drop, so even after Grant uses his Hyper Potion, I can still one-hit KO Amara on the next turn. Snorlax hits through paralysis and takes the one-hit KO against Amara. Grant then sends out his Ace Tyrant, to which the plan is just the same. I plan on hitting as many Rock Smashes as possible to kill the Tyrant, but I can't hit through paralysis this time, and because of my bulk, I just stay in and take a bite. and this time I flinch, and I get hit with another stomp, and I flinch, and I get hit with another stomp, and I flinch. And if you couldn't have guessed it, I get hit with another stomp, and I flinch yet again. Pudge can't take any more damage, so I make the hard switch into our newly evolved Diggersby, Fergie Jenkins, who takes a soft bite. Fergie is faster and hits a mud shot against the Tyrant, bringing it slightly under half, and also lowering its speed, so we definitely outspeed next turn after Tyrantrum tries to maintain speed control with Rock Tomb. We hit one more mud shot, and with that, we've beaten Grant and taken the second gym badge. With our second gym badge in hand, it's time to pick up some more encounters on the way to the third gym. We go back to Parfum Palace and grab a magic art named Craig Biggio, as well as a couple other important encounters for the run. Golett, named Vladimir Guerrero, as well as we pick up a Staravia with Intimidate, which we name Stan the Man Musial. We also pick up Harmon Killabrew the Chingling that never sees the light of day again. And from here it's time for our first rival fight with Serena. She sends out her signature Meowstic, and I send out my newly evolved Crocorock, Daryl Strawberry. I take a flinch and can't move this turn, so I get hit with a disarming voice that takes me well into the yellow, but I retaliate with a strong crunch, bringing the Meowstic down into the red. I have to hard switch out Daryl into George Sisler, who's newly evolved into Quilladin, so that he can take a disarming voice. George takes another disarming voice from the Meowstic, and I'm able to hit back with a pin missile that takes out the cat. Serena sends out an Absol of her own, and I make the decision to hard switch George out for my newly evolved Gyarados Craig Biggio, who drops Absol's attack with Intimidate, and I take a weak quick attack. From there I take another quick attack from the neutered Absol, and I hit Absol with my Dragon Rage, which will take out in 2 hits here, and Absol will go down just as easy. Serena will send out her own starter, Braxian, which I decide to hard switch Craig out for Jim Tomei, my newly evolved Wartortle from Squirtle, to tank a potential Fire Spin. Braxian ends up using Psybeam against Jim, to which I use Water Pulse in response, but because Braxian is so specially defensive, it doesn't even take her into the yellow, but I do end up getting a Confusion. Thanks to that Confusion, Braxian hits itself in Confusion, allowing Jim to hit one more Water Pulse and bring Serena's starter down, leading to my first victory over my rival. From here, it's time to take on our next gym leader, Karina, who uses fighting type Pokemon. And now you might remember that I picked up Vlad Guerrero previously before this gym, and that he's a ghost type, and because of the moves that Karina has on her Pokemon, there's just quite simply nothing she can do to stop our little ghost totem Pokemon, whatever he is. So while this is kind of playing in the background, I'll talk through some stuff myself. I hope all 12 of you that are watching this are enjoying this, and maybe if there's a 13th person, that really push it over. If you guys want to subscribe or leave a comment about the naming theme, if any of you guys have figured it out at this point, that would be awesome. I can imagine some of you might pick up on it, but yeah, we'll just have to see if any of you guys are fans of that. I made this video and this channel to kind of keep myself honest and make sure I see through my challenges instead of getting stuck in mid-game, because it's just not fun and seeing it through the end. So yeah, if you guys want to see more, drop comments on what you want to see, and oh, look at that, I guess we won, so that's cool. From there, we go to the Tower of Mastery and beat Corinna again with her own Lucario, to which we're offered the new Lucario named Tim Anderson. And then from there, we take the gift encounter from Route 12, the Lapras, which we name Rick Russell, who is kind of the whale, but kind of not the whale. Once we get to Comarine City, we're challenged again by Serena to another rival fight. And this time she sends out her signature Meowstic again, and just like the last fight that happened not too long ago, I sent out Daryl Strawberry, the Crocorock. This is a pretty similar fight from the last fight. We get faked out and flinched, Meowstic hits off a strong disarming force, and Daryl Strawberry hits with a hard crunch again. I change into Quilladin, and he'll take another disarming voice here. George takes another side beam just like last time, but this time I only hit a 2-shot on my pin missile and it's not enough to kill the Meowstic. So I decide to make the switch to Pudge so that he can tank a disarming voice with all of his bulk. From there, Pudge takes another side beam, and I just hit back with a body slam because all it would have taken was anything to kill the cat. Serena decides to send out her Absol, and I take a bite as Pudge fires off a body slam, which does half and also gets the paralysis against the Absol, where I'm able to outspeed next turn and take the KO with a crit for insult to injury. Serena sends out her Ace Braxian, and I decide that Pudge definitely can't take another hit from this special monster, so I decide to send in Rick Russell, the newly acquired Lapras, to tank a critical hit but mild side beam. From there, Braxian outspeeds and hits with another critical hit side beam, and Rick retaliates with a strong surf that almost kills the Fox, to which I take another side beam and fire off one last surf to bring down the special attacking Fox. And now, since Serena so rudely interrupted me while I was trying to go to my 4th gym, it's now time to take on the gym leader Ramos, who specializes in grass-type Pokemon. Ramos sends out a Jumpluff, and I decide that I should send out my Lapras since he learns Ice Beam very early. Jumpluff does hit me with a nasty Grass Knot, but thankfully I'm never dead to crit, so Lapras is able to hit a quad weak Ice Beam on the little Spore, and also crit for insult to injury and knock him out. Ramos decides to send in a Weepinville, and I decide to switch out our Lapras to send Todd, the Butterfree, who can take a Grass Knot unlike Lapras, and I also get to crit from the Grass Knot. Butterfree is faster than Weepinville, and I'm able to hit a side beam that brings Weepinville well into the yellow as I tank an Acid that hardly does anything to the Butterfly. Ramos, in the face of defeat, decides to heal up his Weepinville with a Hyper Potion, and I decide to do the same thing and hit Weepinville with another strong side beam. Also managing to grab the confusion on the Weepinville. From there, it's just one more side beam to take the KO on the Weepinville, and we're able to knock out Ramos' second Mon. Ramos sends out his ace, Go-Go, which is a little bit of a problem. Because Go-Goat has strong takedown in the back, I decide to swap out Todd and swap in Stan, or Staraptor, who hits an Intimidate to bring down Go-Goat's physical attacking. Stan uses an Aerial Ace on the Go-Goat to bring him down into the yellow, as well as Go-Goat misses a takedown. From there, it's just one more Aerial Ace on the Go-Goat to knock him out, get the last KO, and defeat Ramos. And with that, Ramos gives us the 4th gym badge, and we're halfway through our gym challenge. From here, we go to Route 13, and we encounter a Doug Trio, which I think is a nice addition, but soon find out after not catching him that he has Arena Trap, and decide that the 3 floors shit is not worth Pudge's life. So I end up just taking the KO on Doug Trio and getting the heck out of Dodge. Oh yeah, and we restored power and killed this chick's Mightyena, so I guess that was kind of cool too, if you've ever played Kalos. With the power back on and the electricity restored, we're able to take on the 5th gym leader, Clement, who specializes in electric-type Pokémon. Clement sends out an Emolga, which can be a little demon from hell, and I send out Dave Parker, our Onyx that we picked up a while back. Emolga hits me with a weak aerial ace, and I decide since Onyx is so bulky, I'm gonna set up Stealth Rocks. Emolga decides to hit me with another weak aerial ace, and this time our Onyx hits a Rock Slide that brings Emolga into the yellow. Emolga hits yet another weak aerial ace on the Rock Snake, and Onyx is able to take the KO with another Rock Slide, hitting through the 90% accuracy move, which is awesome. Clement sends in his Ace Heliolisk, and I get some chip off of Stealth Rocks. This thing knows Grass Knot, so I decide to swap out Dave into Pudge to take the Grass Knot, which hardly tickles him. Snorlax's love, Snorlax's life. Heliolisk hits Pudge with another Grass Knot, takes him down about 40 to 50, and Snorlax hits back with a Body Slam that brings Heliolisk down well within the yellow, and I get hit with another Grass Knot, and we fire back with one more Body Slam, which will take the KO on Clement's Ace. Last, Clement sends out Magneton, whose Sturdy is broken by the rocks we set up earlier. I swap out Pudge for Krokorok, while all Magneton decides to do is set up Electric Terrain, which I truthfully still don't know what it does. New mechanics are foreign to me. From there, Daryl uses a Dig, and Magneton uses a Mirror Shot to try to connect, but since I'm underground he can't hit me, and Daryl's able to fire off a Dig on the Magneton for quad effective damage, take the KO, and with that we've defeated Clement. And then Clement forks over the 5th badge, the Voltage badge, and we're on our way to our next rival fight. Serena stops us with Trevor and challenges us to a fight, and just like every other fight, Serena leads off with her Meowstic. I decide this time to mix things up and send Pudge out because Pudge can take just about anything from this cat. It doesn't really matter what move I choose here because I know Meowstic's going to fake me out and flinch me this turn. This turn Pudge gets nailed with a Psychic that does a decent bit of damage and also lowers my special defense, but Pudge fires off a Body Slam that brings Meowstic willing. Meowstic uses Psychic on Pudge again, but even with the special defense drop we are safe from death, and Pudge hits another Body Slam to take the KO on the cat, even critting. Serena decides to send out her Absol this time. I decide to swap Pudge out for George, who's newly evolved into a Chestnut, to take the resisted bite. Absol's faster and fires up another bite on George, and also ends up flinching George so he can't move this turn. Absol fishes for a critical hit with Slash, and George sets up a Leech Seed on Absol, sapping away at his health turn by turn, and brings us to my favorite strat and the reason we picked Chestnut in the first place. Welcome to Spiky Shield, Leech Seed, Stall. Almost as toxic as, well, Toxic Stall, but much better in my mind. We hurt Absol with the shield, as well as getting some health back on our Leech Seed. Absol hits us with another resisted bite, and since Absol's low enough now, George is able to hit a Seed Bomb and take the KO against Absol. Serena now sends in her Ace Delphox. I know George can't take either move that this Fox has, so I decide I need to hard switch him into Rick to either take a Side Beam or a Mystical Fire, and Delphox uses Side Beam. Next turn Delphox uses Mystical Fire instead, which also brings down Rick's special attack, making our Surf slightly less effective on the Menacing Fox. I decide to stay in with Rick and take another Mystical Fire, which also brings my special attack down to -2 now, but I have to hit it back with another Surf on the Menacing Fox. I know Rick can't take another attack from Delphox, so I decide to switch into Daryl, who ends up actually being immune to the Psy Beam that it decides to eat. But this is where tragedy strikes. I was unaware of just how powerful Delphox was, and they knock out Daryl. I decide to swap in Andre Dawson, our newly evolved Meowstic, to tank a Mystical Fire from the Fox. Even at -1 special attack, Meowstic is still able to secure the KO against the Fox, but we have our first death of the run, and it was Daryl Strawberry the Crocodile. With that loss, we pick up a couple more encounters. We pick up Carnivine, we name Rick Porcello, and then we go back to Azure Bay, and we pick up a Tentacle, which we name Steve Garvey. We then arrive in Lavere City, where we take on the gym leader Valerie, who is the first gym leader to specialize in fairy-type mons. Valerie sends out a Mawile, which is a demon that's typing alone Fairy Steel, and I decide to send in Fergie Jenkins, or Diggersby. Fergie hits a strong Mud Shot, which brings Mawile well into the yellow, and drops its speed, as well as Mawile hits us back with a Crunch that hardly does damage to us. Fergie hits another Mud Shot on Mawile, which secures us the first KO on Valerie's Mons. Valerie sends out her Mr. Mime, who threatens with setting up screens. Since Fergie has so much health left, I decide to hit some Mud Shots to bring down Mr. Mime's speed. We hit back with another Mud Shot to bring Mr. Mime one speed stage lower, but then we get hit back with a nasty Psychic that crit would have killed. I decide to hard switch Fergie out for Pudge so that he can start tanking Psychics, to which he is able to tank the Psychic from Mr. Mime quite easily. Pudge uses Body Slam and outspeeds because of all the speed drops, bringing Mr. Mime into the red and also adding Paralysis. Mr. Mime does set up Reflect, making Pudge a little less effective. Valerie decides to heal this turn, and I'm okay with that because I'm slightly more worried about her ace in the back. Pudge fires off a Body Slam that doesn't do nearly as much as it did before. We hit another Body Slam on Mr. Mime, bringing him back into the yellow, and Mr. Mime is paralyzed and can't move this turn, thankfully. Valerie has no honor and decides to use a Hyper Potion on her Mr. Mime, clinging to them for dear life to try and beat my Snorlax. We end up hitting another Body Slam, and then another Body Slam the next turn, bringing Mr. Mime back to where he was originally. Mime does manage to hit us with a Psychic, but it hardly does anything. And then next turn, we use a Body Slam and finally take the KO on Mr. Mime. Valerie now sends out her Ace Sylveon, which I was worried about. I decided I need to switch Pudge out and send in Nolan Arenado the Beedrill, who resists the Dazzling Gleam that Sylveon fires at us. Beedrill is faster and fires off a super effective Poison Jab on Sylveon, bringing them under half. But Sylveon fires back with a Charm that significantly lowers my attack. That's no problem, it was an effortless ball moment, and I decided to hit a Poison Jab, which ends up critting, and I take the KO against Sylveon. That's our 6th gym badge, and from there, we're headed on to the Pokeball Factory for a little bit of Team Flare fun. We take on a couple of Team Flare admins with Serena. She sends out her Meowstic, I send out Digger. Just know Meowstic does get absolutely handled by Life Guard, and Diggersby does try to take out Manectric. Meowstic does go down next turn, but because of Diggersby, I'm almost able to take out the Manectric. Serena sends out her Absol, and Fergie finishes off Manectric. Then, with a couple more quick attacks from Absol and Diggersby hiding in the ground, we are able to take out these admin drones. Now that that's done, we get a slew of new encounters, like Chris Sale the Klefki, Chuck Klein the Magneton, then Dallas Keuchel the Fungus, Then Jose Leclerc, the Bergmate, as well as Jose Cruz, the Delibird. Serena rudely challenged me outside of the 7th gym again. She's got a thing for challenging outside of the gym, I guess. Serena sends out her Meowstic, just like normal, and this time I decide to send out Rick Russell. Just like normal, Meowstic hits a Fake Out, and I flinch this turn and can't move. Next turn, Meowstic fires off a Psychic against Lapras, and then gets a crit as well as a special defense drop, but I fire back with an Ice Beam on the cat. I'm in a bit of a bind already, so I decide to swap Lapras out for Jim Tomei the Blastoise to take care of business against the cat, as well as take a Disarming Voice, which ends up critting us as well. Unlucky. Jim takes another Disarming Voice from the Meowstic, and this time fires back with a Strong Bite. Meowstic this time decides to hit a Psychic on Jim, which is a little more hard, and this time I fight back with another Bite, which is able to finally knock out the cat. Serena sends out her Jolteon, seeing the fast. I make the hard switch from Jim to Vladimir Guerrero, who cannot be touched by this Jolteon. Serena knows this and decides to swap out her Jolteon and send in her Absol instead, to which Vladimir hits a Magnitude on Absol, bringing Absol into the yellow. I know Absol has strong Dark type moves, so I decide to swap Vlad out for the keys that even God feared, Klefki, Chris Sale, and Absol greedily goes for a Swords Dance this turn. That's okay though, Chris is faster and able to hit a Dazzling Gleam that knocks out the Absol's remaining health. Serena sends out Delphox, which is now feared and respected by me. I decide to switch Chris out and send Craig in, who ends up getting an Intimidate, not like it matters, on a special attacker. And Craig also ends up tanking a Psychic, which does more damage than I had expected. Flustered, I decide to swap Craig out and send Pudge in to tank a Psychic, since he is so specially bulky as well. But next turn, I am unlucky as Delphox lands another Psychic, but this time hits a crit against Pudge as I hit a Yawn on the Fox. Knowing that I can't stay in, I decide to swap Pudge out and send in Vlad Guerrero. Vlad takes a nasty Flamethrower from the Fox, which was a crit risk, but I'm guaranteed one turn of sleep now. With the guaranteed turn of sleep, I decide to go for a Shadow Punch against the Fox, bringing it well into the red. At this point, I decide not to risk Vlad's life, and I decide to hard switch him for Rick, but I am lucky and Delphox still stays asleep this turn. Delphox ends up sleeping yet another turn, and Rick is able to take a Surf on the Fox, bringing it down finally. Serena sends out her Jolteon, and I make the hard switch back to Vladimir Guerrero because Jolteon can't touch us. And from here, it doesn't really matter what Jolteon does. Vladimir Guerrero's just going to hit some Magnitudes on it, bringing it down into the red, not killing it, and then hitting another one on Jolteon again, taking the KO and beating Serena yet again. After that little interruption from Serena, it's time to take on the 7th gym leader, Olympia. She specializes in Psychic-type Pokemon, and she ends up sending out a Sigilyph first, as I decide to send in my Tyrantrum, who evolved from Tyrant Goose Gossage. Sigilyph decides to set up Reflect first, and I decide to just brute force this fight and hit with a Crunch since I have Strong Jaw and all my biting moves do more damage. Even with Reflect, we still do half damage. Sigilyph decides to set up the other screen, but I do not care because I can hit back with another super effective crunch to take out the, I don't know what to call it, runes, flying runes, I guess. Olympia decides it's time to send in her next mon, Slowking. And since Slowking has absolutely no water moves to threaten us, I just stay in and hit another super effective crunch, bringing Slowking around half, but I get Yawn from Slowking this turn. Not wanting to deal with the sleep lottery, I decide to swap out Goose and send in Andre Dawson instead, who also gets hit with a Yawn. Really weird AI from Olympia. I made the decision to go with a Shadow Ball and stay in, even though I'll fall asleep and light screen's still up. And Slowking goes for Yawn again, and I fall asleep. But thankfully, I had a Lumberry on Meowstic, so I wake up. I decide to swap out Andre Dawson for Vladimir Guerrero, and Slowking decides yet again he wants to yawn my Pokemon. Also, light screen wears off this turn. I decide to hit a Shadow Punch against the Slowking to take the KO now that Reflect is also down. Vlad does fall asleep from the yawn that Slowking used, but I also have a Lumberry on Vlad to recover and wake back up. Olympia sends in her ace Meowstic. Meowstic fires off a super effective Shadow Ball on Vlad, bringing me about half, and I retaliate with a Shadow Punch, bringing that Meowstic well into the red. I decide to hard switch Vlad out and send Absol in to resist any Shadow Balls, but Olympia decides this turn that she wants to use a Hyper Potion and restore Meowstic's health instead. I resist the Shadow Ball that the Meowstic hits Absol with, and then use a Night Slash to do super effective damage and take the one-hit KO on the stupid cat. With that, we have our 7th gym badge, and we are one away from completing all of the gyms. But wait, there's more. Angry man with fire hair decides that he wants to make a better universe or something. I don't know, Team Flare's kinda out there. We head back to Lumio City to take on what is one of 3 fights against Lysander. I'll show you the first and the third because the second one is so similar to this one, it's not even funny. Lysander sends out his Minfu, and I saw Evan Longo. Evan outspeeds Minfu and hits a base 120 acrobatics since not holding an item and takes the one-hit KO. Lysander sees the super effective damage with Gyarados and sends him out to fight Evan. I decided I need to swap Evan out because an Aqua Tail is looming, and I send George Sisler in to take the damage from Gyarados. And you guessed it, it's time for another Leech Seed Spiky Shield stall, because Gyarados threatens with Outrage, and Outrage is rather scary for most of my mons to take from this high attacking Pokemon. We take the KO. He sends out Murkrow, which is kind of embarrassing to have at this point in the game, but whatever. I decided I needed to swap George out because Murkrow threatens with Aerial Ace, and swap Chuck Klein in to tank the resisted Aerial Ace from Murkrow. Murkrow tries to be cute and uses a Foul Play against Chuck Klein, but because Chuck Klein knows Thunderbolt, Murkrow's day is over, and I get the one-hit KO on him. Lysander then decides to send out Pyro. I know I need to swap Chuck Klein out, so I decide to swap him out for Jim Tome, who will resist the Fire Blast that Pyro fires off against us. From there, Pyro decides to use Hyper Voice on Jim Tome, but we have a Citrus Berry to recover some health. And with that health, we decide to fire off a Surf, which will bring Pyroar deep into the red. Pyroar is kind of a menace, so I decided to swap Jim out and swap Rick Russell in, since he did so much damage last turn. Hyper Voice hardly does anything to lap. Pyroar then fires off a Fire Blast on Lapras, bringing us close to half, and then Rick is able to take the KO with a final serve on the Lion. And with that, we've beaten Lysander for the first. There were a lot of other fights in Team Flare, but can I just say that this is the stereotypical Discord mod? And contrary Malamar, kind of scary, like holy crap. Did not even think about that, but oh well. It's now time to take on Lysander the Big Bad one last time, and it looks like he stole tech from that 5th gym leader, the kid, Clement, so kind of weird. I'd really like to know what the functionality is behind that. But anyways, it's time to fight him for the 3rd and final time. As you can see, Lysander's armed with a Mega Ring, which is a Mega Gyarados in the backfield. But first and foremost, Lysander sends out a Mienshao, and I send out my Talonflame, Evan Longo, to deal with the fighting type. I figured just like last time, Acrobatics will one-shot the Mienshao, but I forget to not give Evan Longo an item, and Mienshao lives, but we get a Flame Body proc when Mienshao hits an Acrobatics on us. Evan finishes the job with one more Acrobatics to knock out the whatever kind of animal that's supposed to be. Lysander decides to send out his Pyroar next, and I make the decision that I need to swap out Evan Longoria and swap in Goose Gossage to deal with the Lion. Goose takes a resisted Hyper Voice, which still takes me down almost a third. Pyroar then hits me with a Dark Pulse, and I retaliate with an Earthquake, which ends up critting, but the crit didn't really matter. We do get some health recovered with a Held Citrus Berry, and Lysander decides to send in his Honchkrow next. I know Goose can't take a Steel Wing, so I decided to swap him out for Chuck Klein the Magnezone, and take a resisted Steel Wing that hardly does anything to us. Honchkrow decides to go for a Night Slash, but does end up with a crit, even though I resist, it still does a chunk of damage, and Chuck fires off a Thunderbolt to hit through Honchkrow's weak defenses and take the one-hit KO. Lysander sends out his Ace Gyarados, who he intends to Mega Evolve next turn. I know that Chuck can't take an Earthquake from this attacking monster, so I decide to swap him out into Longoria so that he's immune to the coming Earthquake after Gyarados Mega Evolves into a Water and Dark type. Gyarados also gains Mold Breaker, but that isn't a problem for our plan. Evan baits the Aqua Tail, so we swap out from Evan into George so that he can resist the pending Aqua Tail from the hard-hitting Gyarados. And from here, now that George is in, it's time to do my absolute favorite tactic, which is Spiky Shield, Leech Seed Stall, so that I can get around Gyarados' hard-hitting Outrages. Since Gyarados is now low enough and I'm high enough health, I'm able to take one more Outrage from the monster, and then I'm able to hit it with a Seed Bomb for super effective damage now that it shed its Flying type, and knock out Lysander's final Pokemon. And just like every gamer, Lysander's pissed and throws his controller because, you know, we do that from time to time. With that little distraction over, we pick up 2 new encounters. I pick up a Durant I name Xander Bogaerts, and a Sligo I name Frank Robinson. So I decided to keep the bridge rivals fight in the video, just kind of for myself, because I kind of want to use these videos as a way to document my own runs and kind of what I did. Nothing really too exciting happened here, nobody went down here, so it just kind of sped it up for you guys if you guys wanted to take a peek. Otherwise, we're kind of getting towards the end game, so this is going to be fun, and I hope you guys have been enjoying this very long video so far. Before the 8th gym, we pick up a couple more encounters. I pick up Jigglypuff, Roberto Clemente, I name him, and then I pick up Cecil Fielder, the Gothorita. And now, it's time to take on the 8th gym leader, Wolfric. and he specializes in ice types, and can't I just say that this fight as an 8th gym leader is kind of a letdown in terms of difficulty. I send out Tim Anderson to counter his Snow Warning Abomasnow, and from here begins the slaughter. Lucario outspeeds Abomasnow and one-shots with close combat. Wulfric then sends in his Cryogonal, which Lucario then outspeeds and one-hit KOs with close combat again, sending his second Mon down. Wulfric then decides to send in his ace Avalugg, and this time I one-shot the Avalugg with a Amphorasphere, defeating Wulfric's ace and collecting my final gym badge, and ready to go to the Pokemon League. On my way to the league, I pick up 2 final encounters. I pick up Manny Ramirez the Ursaring, and then I pick up Zweilius, who I named Johnny Bench. On our journey through Victory Road, we're challenged by Serena to one last rival fight. Serena sends out her Meowstic just as she always has, and this time I decide to lead with my Durant, Xander Bogarts. Just like always, Meowstic hits me with a Fake Out, and Durant can't move this turn. Xander is faster than Meowstic and hits Meowstic with a X-Scissor, which takes the one-hit KO on the cat. Serena, seeing the quad weakness, decides to send out her Delphox. I know Xander can't stay in, so I decide to swap into Jim so that he can take the flamethrower that Delphox fires off against what she thought was a quad weakness. Delphox fires off a strong Psychic, bringing me well under half. My Citrus Berry recovery does get me back over half, and Jim fires off a Surf to bring Delphox into the yellow. Delphox hits Jim with another Psychic, bringing me back into the yellow, but Jim's able to take the KO against the Fox finally with one last Surf. Serena sends out Jolteon, and I know that Jim can't take a nasty discharge, so I swap Jim out and swap Vlad back in to be immune to the discharge from Jolteon. Serena knows that she can't hit my Pokemon, so she decides that she should swap out into her Absol, to which Vlad hits an Earthquake and takes the one-hit KO on the Absol on the switch in. Serena sends out a new Pokemon she acquired, an Altaria, and I decide to swap Vlad out and swap in Rick Russell for Lapras. Rick takes a pretty soft Dragon Pulse from the Altaria on the switch in. And then we take another soft Dragon Pulse on the next turn. This time, Rick fires back with a quad effective Ice Beam against the Dragon type Cottonmon, I guess? Serena sends out Jolteon, and knowing that Jolteon can't hit Vlad, I swap Vlad back in, and I tank a discharge by being immune. Serena hopes that somehow a discharge will hit Vlad, but Vlad can't be hit by discharge, so an Earthquake takes Serena out for the final fight with our rival. While the fight with Serena was easy, we lost a lot of Mons through Victory Road, like Evan Longoria to this Machamp. We then also lost Frank Robinson to a Mega Horn that did way more damage than I was expecting. Lost Jim Tomei to a Technician Scizor. Got hit with a Blizzard, critted on not effective damage on Xander, and lost him as well. Didn't realize that Snorlax had Earthquake and took out my favorite set of keys. We even lost Mad Bum to a Focus Blast on the last trainer in Victory Road. With that final loss, it's time to take on the Pokemon League. I decided to bring Chestnut, Staraptor, Golurk, Lapras, Gyarados, and Tyrantrum. I decided to take Drasnon first. I believe I have the best matchup into her and want to take the first E4 member out cleanly. She sends out Dragalge, and I decide to send out Vlad for the super effective matchup ground. I think for the first time this playthrough, Vlad outspeeds something and takes the one-hit KO on the Kelp, whatever it is. Drasna sends out her Altaria next, and I know Vlad can't stay in, so I decide to swap him out for Rick, who can tank this Dragon Pulse for breakfast from the Altaria. Just like with Serena, I see the quad effective Ice Beam, even though Altaria goes to raise its defenses, even though that's not going to help it whatsoever, and Rick is able to take the one-hit KO on the flying piece of cotton. Drasna sends in her Dreadington next, who sees a nice revenge kill on Lapras, so I decide to swap Rick out and put George in to tank the revenge hit from Dredagon. Now that George is in, Dredagon sees Dragon Tails, so I decide to hit a spiky shield so I can get some chip damage on the dragon. With George being faster than Dredagon, I hit a Hammer Arm to bring it into the yellow, thinking that I'm going to get swapped out here by Dragon Tail, but I also take some chip from Rough Skin. Dredagon does indeed connect with the Dragon Tail, swapping George out and bringing Stan the Man in. Stan does get an Intimidate on Dredagon, bringing its attack down one stage. Not that it matters, because Stan outspeeds and takes the remaining health from Dredagon with a nasty Brave Bird. We do take some damage on the Rough Skin and Brave Bird recoil, but totally worth it to bring down the dragon. Drowza sends out her final Mon Noivern, and I decide that Stan can't stay in, so I swap him out for Rick, who tanks another Dragon Pulse from a different Mon this time, although this one does a bit more than the one from Altaria. Rick can safely take one more Dragon Pulse from Noivern, even a crit, but thankfully we don't get crit, and we do recover some of our health back with our Citrus Berry. Not that it matters, because we fire off a quad effective Ice Beam on Noivern, and we take the one-hit KO on it, securing the first Elite Four victory. With Drasna defeated, I feel that Wickstrom is actually the next best matchup into our typing, so I decide to take him on next. Wickstrom, looking like he just came from the Renaissance Fair, threatens me with Steel-type Pokemon. Wickstrom sends out his lead Klefki, or Jingling Keys, and I decide that I should send out Vladimir Guerrero. Klefki's faster and decides to set up some spikes on my team, but that's okay. Vlad hits an Earthquake that one-shots and kills the set of keys. Goodbye, Demon Keys, once and for all. Wickstrom sends out his Scizor next, and I know that Vlad can't stay in, so I decide that I need to swap him out, and odd enough, I swap in our Magnezone. Chuck takes a little chip from the spikes, and I take a Night Slash from the Scizor for a small amount of damage. Scizor is still fishing for crits, so Scizor hits me with a Night Slash, and this time does get a crit, activating my Citrus Berry and bringing Chuck back up to higher health, and I fire back with a Thunderbolt for decent damage. Scizor hits me with another Night Slash, this time not a crit, and Chuck is able to fire off one more Thunderbolt, bringing Scizor down and taking out Wickstrom's second Pokemon. Wickstrom sends out a Probopass next, seeing the super effective Earth Power, so I decide to swap Chuck out and swap in Stan, who would be immune to Earth Power, also intimidating the Probopass and being immune to the Earth Power. The point of bringing Stan is to hit a U-turn on Probopass so that I can break his Sturdy, and then I can swap in Vladimir Guerrero for free on a what should be a Power Gem, and is in fact a Power Gem after I take some damage from spikes, still leaving Vlad with tons of health. Vlad fires off an Earthquake, killing the Probopass, and leaving Wickstrom with only one Pokemon, an absolute menace. Wickstrom sends out his ace, Aegislash. Aegislash threatens with a Shadow Claw, so I know I have to swap Vlad out and swap Stan in, who's immune. I do end up getting Intimidate to drop the attack on Aegislash, making it a little less scary with Sacred Sword. Aegislash changes stances and goes into shield form, hitting a King Shield, protecting itself, and Stan goes for a U-turn, which protects itself and lowers my attack significantly. Stan's still faster, so I do hit a U-turn so that I can get a switch and a tiny bit of chip out and swap George in. With George in, I take chip on the spikes on the ground, as well as Aegislash changes forms again and hits me with an Iron Head, bringing me slightly above half. I then use a spiky shield with George, anticipating Aegislash to also hit me with a King Shield so I don't lower my attack for the next turn. We taught George Earthquake so that we would have a super effective move since we can't hit him with a fighting type move, bringing Aegislash still above half. Aegislash does hit us with yet another Iron Head, bringing us into the yellow, but with a Health Citrus Berry we're able to get back over half. Starting to get afraid of George's health, I decide to swap George out and swap Stan back in to bring the sword down to -2 attack, while it goes for a protect with King Shield. This turn I go for a U-turn so that Staraptor can swap out and swap in Gyarados. This allows for us to get another attack drop on the Mighty Sword and bring it down to -3, making it a bit safer to take on this absolute demon of a mon. Aegislash, while highly neutered, hits an Iron Head that brings Gyarados down hardly any. With Craig knowing Earthquake, next turn I'm able to finally take the kill on the Sword and Shield and bring Wickstrom to his knees, beating the second Elite Four member. With the Renaissance man defeated, it's time to take on our third fight, and I decide to take on Malva next, who specializes in Fire-type Pokemon. We're no stranger to her lead Mon from Lysander, and Malva sends out a Pyroar first, and I decide to counter her Pyroar. I will send out Vlad Guerrero. She decides to go for a Noble Bulwark to take down my attack and special attack, and my plan is to hit back with an Earthquake, but I am unable to one-hit KO the Lion. That's okay though, Malva can use her full restore, and I can start bleeding her dry of healing items, because Vlad Guerrero's Earthquake takes her back down to the red. Malva uses her second full restore on Pyroar, and this time I decide to use a Heavy Slam because why not? I don't know what was going through my head, truthfully. Malva decides to go for a Flamethrower on Vlad, and I take a decent bit of damage, but I retaliate with an Earthquake that's finally able to take out the Lion once and for all. Malva then sends out her Chandelure. Expecting a Shadow Ball, I decide to swap Vlad out and swap Stan in, who should be immune to any Ghost-type moves that Malva decides to use. I do get an Intimidate, but it doesn't matter on a special attacker. I decide to get some chip with Stan, so I hit a U-turn on Chandelure and even end up getting a crit, even though it hardly does anything. And with that, I decide to swap out Stan and swap in Craig. Again, I get an Intimidate drop on Chandelure, but it doesn't really matter as Chandelure fires off a Confuse Ray. My held Lumberry does cure it off, but there's a flaw in my plan. Chandelure is faster than Gyarados and hits another Confuse Ray. Craig then decides to hit himself in Confusion and throws all my plans out the door. I hope that Craig can hit through on Confusion this turn, and I tank a Shadow Ball that brings me down into the yellow. Although I'm not lucky at all, and I hit myself in Confusion again. It's time to swap Craig out and swap Stan back in, who I predict will be immune to the Shadow Ball, and thankfully I am correct, is immune to the Shadow Ball. I decide to go nuclear and hit a strong Brave Bird against Chandelure, bringing it into the red, thankfully having bled Malva of her full restores earlier. Now Chandelure hits Stan with a Confuse Ray, which is not great for us. I decide I have to swap Stan out if I'm ever going to win this fight, and I have to risk Craig's life, hopefully baiting the correct move out of Chandelure with Stan. And I do. I bait the Flamethrower, which brings Craig within an inch of his life. I then decide to swap Craig back out and swap Stan back in, hoping Malva will get greedy and try to go for the KO, in which she does, and I'm immune to her Shadow Ball. With Stan in safely, and no longer confused, still outspeeding Chandelure, I contemplate for a while because at this point I'm shaking, so scared of the other two Pokemon in Malva's backfield, but end up deciding on choosing Aerial Ace to knock out the frightening Chandelier, taking out Malva's second Mon finally. Malva sends out her third Mon, Torkoal, and I decide since I can outspeed it, I will just use a U-turn for a slow switch and decide to send out George, which is odd since he's a grass type, but hopefully we'll all see the vision here in a moment. But because Malva's already made my day terrible, she decides to make it worse and start setting up on me with Curse, something I had not even thought about at this point in the fight. I decide I need to start getting some damage on this Torkoal, so I decide to go for an Earthquake even though it's +1 defense, and I tank a Flame Wheel quite well from Torkoal. I figure Torkoal will go for another Flame Wheel to try to take me out, but I get the prediction wrong and Torkoal goes for a second Curse, throwing my plans out the door again. I know George can't stay in and take another hit from this boosted up turtle, so I know I have to swap in Rick, a special type attacker, to hopefully take out the turtle once and for all. I do take a Flame Wheel that does end up burning, but like I said, Surf is special, so we're all good in the hood. Thankfully Rick does outspeed the turtle, and with Surf I'm able to take down Malva's third Mon. I do take burn damage that does bring me into the yellow, but thankfully with my Citrus Berry I am able to heal up a bit, making this last Mon a little bit more manageable for me. Malva sends out her Ace Talonflame next, and Talonflame's best attacking move into me is Brave Bird, so it hits me for still a decent bit of damage, and with the recoil from that Brave Bird, Rick is able to fire off one final Surf and bring down the Firebird once and for all, defeating Malva. With Malva defeated, we only have one more Elite Four member between us and the champion. The last Elite Four member is Cybold. Cybold specializes in Water-type Mons, which is probably one of the best types in the game, so this is no easy fight either. Cybold sends out Clawitzer first, and I decide that I'm going to send out Craig Biggio to risk his life first and foremost like the last fight. Craig hits a Thunderbolt on Clawitzer because I don't have too many answers into this big claw, and because of Clawitzer's ability, Dragon Pulse and Launcher moves do a lot of damage. Next turn I use Thunderbolt with Craig again, which sadly brings Clawitzer into the red and healing range as Clawitzer fires off another hefty Dragon Pulse on Craig, and even with the Citrus Berry, bringing us about right at half. With this healing turn, I decide that I should fire off another Thunderbolt on Clawitzer to bring it back down under 2/3. I hit another Thunderbolt, sadly bringing Clawitzer back into the red, as Clawitzer hits me with one more Dragon Pulse, bringing me extremely low. I predict a healing turn here again, so I hit a Thunderbolt to bring Clawitzer back down to about 2/3 health again, and I predict correctly with the Thunderbolt bringing it back down a decent bit. Craig cannot stay in and take another hit from this claw, so I decide to swap George in, who strangely enough ends up tanking Water Pulse of all moves. Odd. From here, George is fast enough and has enough gusto to take out the claw with his Seed Bomb. George can mainly take out most of Seabold's Pokemon except for his Starmie, who threatens with super effective Psychic type moves, so I have to swap Magnezone in on a Psychic to resist it from Starmie. Starmie is faster and goes for a light screen to put up against Chuck Klein, but even with the light screen up, Chuck is able to bring Starmie down into the yellow. Starmie, seeing that life is fleeting, decides to go for an attacking move this turn and hits me with a nasty surf. And even with Citrus Berry, I'm able to recover into the green again, and my Thunderbolt will finally bring down the stupid Starmon. Seabold sends out his Gyarados next, and I know that Chuck cannot tank an Earthquake from this Gyarados just like with Lysander, so I have to swap Chuck out and swap Rick in. Rick absolutely tanks this Earthquake from the Gyarados that was meant for our Magnuson. Gyarados does the worst thing possible for me and decides to start setting up Dragon Dances. Even with Lapras' newly learned Thunderbolt, I can't quite bring Gyarados into the yellow with my first hit. I figure Gyarados will get greedy and go for another D-Dance, so I decide that I need to stay in and hit another Thunderbolt on Gyarados, hopefully bringing it closer to the red. Though my Thunderbolt is only able to bring it down to the low yellow. I decide this turn that I need to risk the crit if I'm ever going to make it to the champion, so Gyarados fires off an Earthquake. I thankfully survive in the red, and with Citrus Berry I am able to recover a little bit of health, though it doesn't matter, as Rick is able to fire off a Thunderbolt, finally taking out the... I don't know, I guess he's a carp. With Gyarados dead, it's time to send in Cybold's Ace Barbaracle. I know Rick can't stay in, so I need to swap him out, and I decide to swap George in for the quad effective grass type move into Barbaracle. I am hit with a Stone Edge for decent damage, and then next turn I am hit with a Cross Chop that also does a decent bit of damage, even recovering some health with my held Citrus Berry. But then I fire off a Seed Bomb, and I am able to take out the Crustacean once and for all, defeating all of the Elite Four members. From here, there's nothing left to do but to take on the champion. I go to take on the champion, Diantha, who is apparently also the actress that we met all those moons ago, and it's time for our final fight of the run. Diantha sends out Hawlucha, and I send out my Stan the Man Musial Staraptor, who also gets an Intimidate on the Flying Luchador, bringing his attack down one stage. I hope that Hawlucha is greedy, and he in fact is, and hits a Sword Dance, bringing his attack up to just +1, but that's okay because Stan hits an Aerial Ace, bringing Hawlucha down into the red. This is planned though, we want Diantha to burn all of her full restores if possible, and we hit another Aerial Ace, bringing Hawlucha down back into the red. Hawlucha gets very greedy and goes for a Sword Dance to bring them back up to +3, but Stan is able to take him out with an Aerial Ace, taking down Diantha's first Mon. Diantha sends in her Tyrantrum next, and I know Stan can't stay in, so I decide to swap him out for George, who can take the incoming Head Smash, but thankfully, Tyrantrum misses the attack. George uses Spiky Shield as always, so I can get some chip damage on the Colossal Dinosaur as he uses Dragon Claw. From there I outspeed, and George is able to hit a Brick Break, bringing Tyrantrum into the yellow while we take a hefty Dragon Claw. From here it's just as simple as hitting Brick Break again and bringing down Diantha's second Mon. Diantha then decides it's time to send out her other Fossil Mon and send out Aurorus, who is quad weak to my Brick Breaks. From there it's just as easy as 1, 2, 3, hitting a Brick Break on Aurorus and bringing the odds forevermore in her favor against Diantha. Diantha decides to send in her pseudo-legendary Goodra, and I know that George can't stay in against a pending Fire Blast, so I decide that I will swap him out for Craig, who absolutely tanks the Fire Blast after getting an Intimidate drop on Goodra, even though it's a special type attacker, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't be a run if we weren't gambling with our lives, so I decided to hit Ice Fangs on Goodra and gamble even harder and get a freeze on the dragon. Since apparently I'm the luckiest guy in the world, I decide to hit another Ice Fang, bringing Goodra within an inch of their life, and to hit another Ice Fang, Diantha does end up hitting a full restore on her Gudra, and Craig does hit one more Ice Fang, bringing it into the yellow. Ice Fangs work so nice, I'll try it again, and I hit one more Ice Fang, bringing it down with High Roll. Diantha then sends out her 5th Mon, Gourgeist. Diantha decides to use Trick or Treat, which makes me a Ghost type, which I guess kind of kills me. But since I'm balling so hard, I decide to go for an Ice Fang on Gourgeist, bringing it into the yellow. I figure Craig can't stay in, so I decide to swap Craig out and swap Stan in, and Gourgeist then decides to hide for a Phantom Force, which means he vanishes and I can't hit him next turn. I click Aerial Ace knowing I can't hit and Phantom Force can't hit me, so then next turn I hit with a Brave Bird because just add insult to injury, right? And then I take out Gourgeist, leaving Diantha with her final Mon. With Diantha left with just her Gardevoir, I know Stan really can't take most of Gardevoir's hits, especially the Thunderbolt that she's threatening with, as well as the -1 Intimidate from trait. I decide it's time to risk another life, and I swap Stan out, and I swap Vlad Guerrero in, who is then immune to the Thunderbolt that Diantha's Gardevoir fires off after Mega Evolving into Mega Gardevoir. Gardevoir obviously outspeeds Vlad and hits me with a nasty Shadow Ball. Crit would have killed, but we live. And with a heavy slam that's super effective against the Fairy type, we are able to take out Diantha's final Pokemon and take the champion down, winning the entire Pokemon Challenge. With the run over, I just want to say thanks for all 12 of you that probably end up watching this. Sorry if my video editing isn't up to snuff with a lot of other people. I'm kind of taking this one day at a time and trying. And really at the end of the day, this is just me trying to self-document a lot of my runs, keep myself accountable to finish my runs. So I hope at least some of you enjoyed it, and I hope to fix and work out a lot of the kinks that I found in this video, and hopefully the next one's a little better quality, and we'll go from there. But again, I've been Yogi, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video, somewhere a little more tropical, hopefully.